Weekend headlines: Celtic continued their domestic dominance with a convincing 20 win over rivals Rangers. Tom Rogic and Lee Griffiths scored the goals to seal a comfortable win and showed they're still well ahead of their rivals who were expected to run them close. Aberdeen responded to their critics with a 10 win at Motherwell following a heavy defeat at the same venue in the Betfred Cup on Thursday night, which caused many people to question their mentality and fight. St Johnstone bounced back from their first league defeat of the season by narrowly getting past Hamilton 21 in a result that was harsh on the Ackies. Hibernian showed no ill effects of Neil Lennon's public dressing down last weekend by picking up their second win in 5 days with the 10 victory against Ross County and Dingwall, and Hearts scrapped a 11 draw at Firhill against Partick Thistle thanks to a Ross Calachan equaliser. Down at Rugby Park, Kilmarnock still await their first league win of the season as they drew 11 at home against Dundee, who themselves have only managed a solitary league win. Old Firm: I've said recently I felt Rangers had closed the gap on Celtic. However, after watching Saturday's game, one got it wrong. Now I know Rangers had a back four that wasn't anywhere near full strength with Bruno Alves and Lee Wallace missing, but the 20 scoreline wasn't a fair reflection on Celtic's dominance. I'll give it to Rangers that they at least showed more fight than at some stages in last season's Old Firm clashes, but the individual quality which Celtic possess is far greater than that of Rangers. Heart, spirit and determination are free, but quality costs a lot more money than Rangers have spent. That must be a huge concern considering the Jazz spent £10 million in the summer and they haven't made any real inroads in closing the gap on the rivals. There will be questions asked yet again about the signings, especially Carlos Peña, who looked way of the pace and out of his depth against a rampant Celtic midfield. In the first half, Rangers fought to stay in the game and contain the champions. They also had some good counter-attacking moves, but the intensity they showed was going to be hard to maintain for the full game, and that proved the case. The attacking threat of Celtic, the pace, the ball retention and most importantly the patience they showed as the game went on was really impressive. Once the game opened up and became stretched, Celtic's passing and movement was too much for Rangers. Scott Brown dictated the action, as he so often does in these matches, with Graham Dorrans and Ryan Jack unable to put him off his stride. Brown seems to raise his game for the big occasion and he delivered the perfect performance yet again. Celtic seemed to have the ideal way of demoralising teams with possession and their incisiveness all over the pitch, and it was particularly evident in the second half with Brown at the heart of everything good about Celtic. You only have to look at the substitutes to get an idea about how strong Celtic are. Last season's top scorer and player of the year, Moussa Dembélé, was reduced to a cameo role, and the informed James Forrest was left to wait until late on before getting a run. It really is a frightening prospect for the rest of the league. If the truth is told, beating Dundee and Ross County isn't enough for Rangers supporters. They want to compete at the top and they seem a distance away from that happening. That is a real worry for Rangers supporters, as it seems more patience will be needed. If there is such a thing, there will be lots of questions surrounding Pedro Caixinha's style of play, signings, team selection and whether he can make Rangers better over time. We will get the answers, but on Saturday's viewing, improvements are needed very soon because their rivals Celtic are extending the gap. Best of the rest, Kilmarnock are making life hard for themselves by gifting their opponents goals, in this case after 3 minutes against Neil McCann's Dundee. Gordon Greer was the guilty party, and although he did get an equaliser later in the game, Lee McCulloch doesn't need individual errors at a time when winning is becoming more difficult for his side. The pressure is building for the Kilmarnock manager and a first league win can't come quick enough. I'm beginning to fear it could be a long season down at Rugby Park. Partick Thistle are the other winless top-flight club after they were held to a draw by Hearts after Blair Spittle had given Thistle the lead. Hearts showed the sort of resilience that has been missing over recent months and managed to wrestle a point back from a game that looked to have got away from them. I do wonder, is it the Craig Levein impact, the fact Ian Cathro is no longer there? I questioned the mentality of Neil Lennon going public with the criticism of his players after last weekend's draw with Motherwell, but, my goodness, have his words had the desired effect. They are into the Betfred Cup semi-finals after a 32 win over Livingston on Tuesday night, and they followed that with a great 10 victory up at Ross County. I'm sure Neil won't want to do that every week as it will lose its effect eventually, but it just shows a bit of honesty doesn't do any harm now and again. Hibs players might disagree with me though. I genuinely feel for Hamilton manager Martin Canning because his side put a lot into their game against St Johnstone but came away with nothing following a defeat. Rakesh Bingham will be reliving his late missed chances over and over in his head, but the moment has gone and he'll have to deal with that. On the flip side for Tommy Wright, his half-time tactical change to mirror Hamilton's 352 formation worked perfectly. Tommy and his team don't get the credit they deserve for some reason, but his intervention made a difference on Saturday and got his side 3 vital points. It was a brave move, but one that paid off for him. The last game of the weekend saw Motherwell host Aberdeen for the second time in 3 days after they met in the Betfred Cup, when Motherwell simply blew Aberdeen away and won 30. Aberdeen were never going to be as passive for a second time, and Derek McInnes' team selection showed much more intent by picking 4 central defenders. The game wasn't one of beauty, but a piece of brilliance from Ryan Christie to set up Andrew Considine for the winning goal was enough for an away win. Aberdeen had exercised the ghost of 3 days earlier, although there's still plenty of work to do for the Dons if they are to replicate last season's second-place finish. Week ahead. After a busy week in which we brought you 4 live games in 6 days on BT Sport, the week ahead looks every bit as important. Celtic face Anderlecht in a game they must not lose game in the Champions League on Wednesday. Effectively, their hopes of progression will be dead if they don't bring something back to Glasgow. It's frightening to think after all the hard work getting into the Champions League, Celtic's journey could be over after match day 2. This is the time for the Celtic players to raise their game again and show they have the quality and mettle to compete amongst Europe's best. Later in the week, join us at the Super Seal Stadium as Hamilton take on a Rangers side looking to avenge last weekend's defeat. A Friday night in Hamilton will test the heart and resilience of the Rangers players, while Accies will be buoyed by their performance at St Johnstone, so we should be set for an entertaining game in front of the BT Sport cameras.